So I think now what we'll do is chuck it out to any of you. I know there were a couple of questions sent in which I was trying to get to, but sorry, I ran out of time. So if you want to ask the questions that you emailed in, please feel free. Or anybody, just raise your hand and maybe say who you are and what company you're from, and talk loudly so the camera picks it up. Anybody? Don't be shy.
I'm going to be not shy.
Yay!
I found the talk absolutely fascinating, and I think a lot of it comes back to, and I'm sorry I can't remember your name, the Osprey lady who's setting up the new list, and you started by saying it's all about putting the reader in touch with what they want to read, and I think that's a lot of what the digital, the past, all these stuff that's going on is really interesting about is it's kind of taking the publisher out of it and re-engaging the author and the reader, and I think that's really exciting, the fact that the whole kind of format is being kind of blown open and re-energised. So that's not really a question, that's more of an opinion.
Opinions are good. Yeah. Come on, let's be a bit assertive about our opinions.
You didn't say who you were or where you're from,
Oh,
so
I'm
I'll do
sorry,
it for you.
Sarah.
That's Karen Ball from Working Partners.
Yeah, I'm Karen from Working Partners and working with children's series fiction.
Yes, please do speak.
I'm Yvonne from Novellus. We're a social community, almost like a social network for young readers and writers. I just wonder what you think of these new community sites that obviously have real insight into the consumers that they're talking to, and what their place is in the whole publishing world. Whether they're a threat, whether they're welcome. There's ourselves, there's Wattpad, there's Figment, many more appearing. Just interested in what you kind of think of our place in the world.
It's really interesting because I was asked recently about where I think our competition lies, and actually, I mean, there are some fantastic business management publishers. So I'm not going to say I'm not going to rely on them, but actually, there's a online networking group that I've been looking at for some time, thinking they do fantastic. There is an enclosed community. And it's very high level, and the sub is extremely high. But what started off as a mentoring, networking club, has actually turned into producing content and producing all sorts of things. And actually, I think that's a really interesting example of where a digital platform has enabled a community to get together, share ideas, and then begin to produce very high-level content. And we have to be aware that that is potentially our new competitors, new entrants, not print publishers, not traditional. And in a sense, we have to look at that and learn from that ourselves.
So frenemies maybe rather than competitors at this
Sorry?
stage. Frenemies rather than competitors?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, it's interesting that the difference is the community you're talking about is paid for. It's not a big difference, but the community you're talking about is a free service.
Right, okay.
And actually, it's interesting. I know I'm not on the panel, but I'm starting to give my opinion. But I mean, things like what you're doing, publishers really like in certain ways because they like to advertise to the people that you're talking to. So that's definitely a partnership. But then if it comes to the point where the content that your writers are writing are starting to sell it to each other, that's when it definitely does become competitive. But I've always been taught that there's so much content out there, and there's room for all kinds of different ways for people to sell content to other people. So it shouldn't ever be.
I think also sometimes when you're talking about value, or you're talking about whether something's successful, it's not always monetary. And I think that's what digital's changed as well. Is if you know your community and you can tap into them very easily, that I think some people would deem as having a successful book, is that, those people might start talking about it, and that, can spread the word and, help with the marketing and that kind of thing. I think if you're smart, you would embrace communities like that, if you can.
Yeah.
My name's Caroline, no company, I'm just an independent blogger. A lot of the talk tonight has been about author engagement and author engagement with readers. Is the day of the reclusive author like Harper Lee completely dead now? Is every author got to be out there on social media, or is there still room for wallflowers?
Well, in our model certainly is. I mean, we do like it if authors talk about what they're doing and what our other authors are doing, but once you've got a brand and a community, the beauty of that is that that's what you're marketing. So if people come and buy one of our books, then they will like others, and therefore I think there is room for authors who just actually like writing.
Sorry, I know we've very briefly touched on visual branding on covers. I was just thinking in the context of increased numbers of self-published authors, and sometimes traditional publishers are not being valued as much anymore because people are aware that they can do it themselves and they can get more money out of it. Do we perhaps need to think about sort of collectively branding ourselves as the traditional publishers that provide quality material? And even if there's almost like a stamp of approval going on the covers of books that you can buy online, so that consumers can see what's gone through an editorial process and what hasn't.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting suggestion. I think it would be very interesting to try to get big name publishers to collaborate on something like that. But it's almost a branding discussion, isn't it? Sort of more than a sort of seal of approval, because that's hard for people to judge. But if Random House starts to be a name, even though it kind of is. It seems like every movie that ever has anything publishing in it, it's like the publishing house is Random House. But I don't, it's still not a brand. You still don't go into the bookshop. In fact, quite recently, as in this morning, I went into Foyles because I wanted to buy some Osprey books and some Kogan page books, and I was trying to look things up by publisher, and the bookseller just looked at me like I was mad. But in his system, there is no way to look up things by publisher. So he can search on a keyword and he can do it not by publisher. So that's a sort of, I don't know, I mean, maybe that's the industry shift that we need to do for the retailers to try to say, I don't know, I mean, but retailers recognize publishers anyway. I don't know, do you have any comments on that?
Well, I think that's because what you found is because over the years publishers have been generalists, and the reason they've been allowed to be generalists is because the bookseller has done the job of sorting and allowing consumers to come in and browse, and that has completely gone on the internet. So there is no way to browse effectively. It's all about search, and therefore.
Ooh, that's one of the questions I really wanted to ask. Nobody asked it. Will you talk a little bit about discoverability, or maybe your, I know it's a catchphrase, but your sort of strategy with how are people going to find books online? Just really quick.
Metadata, brand, metadata. Well, metadata, brand.
There we go. That's two quick answers.
Also, you can find them. Yeah. That's the other thing.
That's lovely. That's very good. Which is kind of what you're doing with your niche publishing.
And I think when you're working niche work, I think it's slightly easier actually, because they all go to certain places online, or in
like
the real world,
sites.
or
it's not cost effective to market single books online. In a bookshop, you can pay a bookseller some money to put it in a big pile on the table. Okay, how much you pay, you have to negotiate. But online, it's not cost effective to market single books.
That's a good. Somebody tweet that.
The marketing campaign around. Oh gosh, I can't remember. The one about the second one's called Insurgent.
Divergent.
Yes, Divergent. The marketing campaign around that has been really, really fascinating. I think it's a very good example of how you can market a small cluster of products.
I mean, I think the specialist publishers, we're in a kind of a good space because we understand our communities. We can generate, we can pull. There's the pull and the push, and we can, we already have that engagement. In terms of consumer or fiction publishing, I still would like to understand how that works in terms of discoverability. So I don't know if anybody in the audience has got any ideas.
Community
and data.
Community and data.
Well, the two are interlinked.
Yeah.
Totally.
And thinking like the consumer as well. Just taking a moment to make sure that your long description says autobiography rather than memoir. So I use the word memoir outside publishing. It's going back to basics and not just being clever. Actually, it's about being the consumer as much as being the publisher.
Simple and clear.
So is that metadata?
when you don't know what you're looking for. If you know what you're looking for, the type of thing you're looking for, then yes, you can use all those things. That thing where you're just going back to a library or a bookshop and something, I'll try that. I don't know if there's a way to do that online yet. I hope there will be, but that's what I think at the moment is being lost. Sometimes actually even looking for things you do know what they are, it's impossible to find. There's an awful lot of work in that direction. I'm not saying it can't be solved. I think at the moment there's still an awful lot of work to be done in solving that, but that's something particularly for children, and I think libraries should be online as well, but you know, it's that discovering the thing, you can discover the book that changed your life that you've never heard of, and it's that chance thing that I think...
You were talking about serendipity.
Yeah. It's something that really makes me think after what you've been saying, but what the digital world is really good at is providing you with stuff similar to the stuff that you already like. So people who like X also like that, or basically the kind of algorithm idea of recommendation. What it's less good at is surprise and serendipity, and finding you something that you never knew that you liked, and allowing you to leap out of your little segment that the world puts you in and into something else. And I think that's almost the kind of holy grail that digital is looking for. That, you know, because almost actually in an old media world, like for example when we had 4 channels, BBC channel, you know, you would sit and just watch telly, and whatever was on, you'd watch it, and you'd get like some weird documentary about donkeys, and you'd find that you had a passion for donkeys because you were forced into it. Whereas now I can say, okay, I really like The Wire, give me something that's a bit like The Wire. I really like HBO's Girls, give me something like Girls. And I end up being a self-fulfilling prophecy of just more and more of a similar taste again and again and again. And nothing encourages me to broaden my horizons.